Public hearing requirement, lawmakers added Bill 350 to this morning's session agenda. Senator Brant McCready's measure would appropriate $600,000 from the Supplemental Appropriation Revenue, or SAR fund, to the Guam Police Department for prior year's overtime owed to their officers.
I don't think that it is right to be able to pay overtime a year later.
Members from the police department made their way to the Guam legislature as lawmakers went into the committee of the whole to discuss the measure further.
I invited them here to show that they are committed to not just serving our island as police department and public safety officials, but getting their overtime pay a year late.
GPD's Administrative Services Officer Ovita Nalta noted that in this fiscal year, over $697,000 was appropriated for overtime. She says minus the 10% reserved by BBMR, GPD has exhausted the entire appropriation.
And we have paid overtime up to pay period ending December 28. So what's pending is January to current. So we have exhausted our means. We have even requested BBMR to see if we can get funding from other object categories to try to cover as much as we can with the overtime, and this is what we came up with.
Vice Speaker B.J. Cruz, meanwhile, questioned aside from the prior year obligations, what about this year?
And how much is due and owing for 2014?
Up to pay period ending May 3rd, we have 1.1 million that's pending.
And the appropriation that is being requested is going to be short?
It's already short, and to begin with, yes.
Nalta further noted that within the next 3 months or until the end of the fiscal year, GPD would need an additional $800,000 to $900,000 for overtime that would result in a $2 million shortfall. Chief of Police Fred Bordalio, meanwhile, said GPD was in communication with BBMR on the cost the department was incurring. Cruz says there should be no reason why GPD's overtime payment isn't met and proffered an amendment to the bill.
Should this bill be amended to read 2.6 million rather than 600,000?
Yes, that's a pragmatic decision to make sure that men and women in the Guam Police Department are compensated for the overtime that's due.
The amendment, however, drew even more questions, including whether there was even enough in the SAR fund. McCready opposed the amendment as he was cautious of overpromising.
The fact of the matter is they worked those hours, did they?
Yes, they did.
The fact of the matter is they continue to work those hours and not get paid overtime.
Correct.
Thank you.
The amendment was still under debate this afternoon. Governor Eddie Calvo, meanwhile, stated in a release he supports McCready's efforts to fund prior year's overtime. He says, quote, "The administration is prepared with cash flow to pay overtime. We simply need the authorization from the legislature to make the payments. We ask senators to keep this simple, appropriate revenues from the identified funding source, and use it on overtime for GPD officers," end quote. Reporting for Guam's News Network, I'm Ken Quintaniza.